Hey everyone. Okay, so yeah, obviously one of the major things to talk about is the discussion between Luffy, Law, and Kid about Buggy and his cross guild organization. I like how Luffy and Zoro bring up the obvious that Buggy's an idiot. There's no way someone like Mihawk or Crocodile would ever serve under him, unless there's some misunderstanding. And yeah, for everyone who's been with the series this long, you know that's exactly what this is. Like, you just know that whatever happened, Buggy fumbled his way into this leadership role of being the leader of Cross Guild on pure accident, with a combination of probably the government and Navy being the idiots they are, just assumed he was the leader by his placement on the poster. Like, then again, it probably doesn't. Then again, it probably didn't help the situation either. That it didn't probably doesn't help Boogie's case either. That because that much like Luffy being Dragon's son, probably being more public now, knowledge that Buggy was a cabin boy on Roger's crew probably didn't help that case either. Like if your first thought is all this is circumstantial, trust me, it more than likely is. Like if Luffy has the best luck in the series, then Buggy has the worst. Like that's basically been established from day one that Buggy was introduced. Um, it should also be noted though that whatever the circumstances of Cross Guild's formation was, they we do hear from Kid that they have built quite a lucrative business by putting bounties on the heads of Marines. And little would I know at the time that this is actually one of the bigger linchpins to the changing tides of this era. And yes, this has to do with Kobe and Garp. Like if the Cross Guild is putting bounties on the heads of Marines, you just know that both Garp and Kobe are gonna be in that pile of posters somewhere. Just somewhere in that whole like bounty list. Kobe and Garp are on that list, and it's one of those interesting things that just kind of looking back on a certain moment that happened recently in the manga, it's like, yeah, you could say Cross Guild was kind of responsible for that one. Uh, of course, outside of Cross Guild, we see Law kind of handing out copies of the Road Poneglyph to Luffy and Kid, which I do like how a scene as small as this really shows Law's character growth. That, yeah, while his alliance with Luffy is effectively over, he still does respect both of them enough that he wants a fair and even competition to get to One Piece. He wants to compete with them. Although that look he's sporting while walking away says he's got another target in mind that he wants to take on his own. Who, and knowing what I know from the manga, yeah, Law's headed for trouble. Like, I'm sorry, Law ain't living through this. And but of course, we also see that Kid's kind of planning out who he's going after next, which it said he's going after a man marked by flames, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's basically just another word for saying scar, I guess. And yeah, I was way off in my prediction when I first read this in the manga of who Kid was going after. Uh, but in hindsight, yeah, the one he's talking about is Shanks, which, yeah, for those who know, you know, but all I will say is that in retrospect, I can't help feel Oda might have jumped the gun a little bit when we get to that moment. Like, I understand the intention, but even understanding the intent doesn't make it any less jarring from the fact that it happened so soon after Wano, honestly. Like, it feels like I don't hate what happened, but I do understand people who even now are still probably angry at the moment I'm talking about, and just what the kind of picture it paints of Kid. Honestly, like it doesn't paint a pretty picture on Kid at all. Honestly, I wish it. Although maybe the manga will do maybe the anime will do something to change that. I don't know, but it's like I'm not holding my breath either. Honestly. Uh, with that said, we do gotta talk, I suppose, about what happens at the end of the episode, where Yamato says that, yeah, like Odin before her and with Roger, she's going to see with Straw Hats, and I've already gone into detail on another episode review of why this isn't going to happen. So, like I said, for anyone still getting their hopes up, I wouldn't hold my breath too much, although I do admit, revisiting this very specific moment in a vacuum does beg the question of why Oda set this moment up if he was just gonna renege on it almost immediately after. Like, he had to have known there would be a group of people who would get pissed at him for not going full through with it, unless it's another one of those things where with Yamato and especially with Wano, he's just putting another piece on the board. Like, even if, like, I actually saw a comment on this episode's I saw a comment on this episode's comment section, and one commenter actually pointed out something that does make a lot of sense to me, which is that I think what Oda's doing by setting this up is that he's not setting Yamato up to join the crew technically, but what he is doing is he's setting Yamato and basically Wano itself up in order to be allies in the future. Like, when it comes time for Luffy and the Straw Hats to kind of get to that point of opposing the world government directly, he is going to come back for everyone he knows he can trust to be an ally, like Yamato and like Momonosuke and Wano. I think in order to help him oppose the world government, like, I think that's kind of what this is going to be about. And it's that moment, I think Pluton itself is also going to be awake, where Momonosuke himself is going to awaken Pluton as well, I think. That said, though, the other big thing to talk about is we see Nekomamushi and Inuarashi call upon Carrot to name her as their successor, as ruler of Zou. And I'm not gonna lie, this is one of Oda's more curious narrative decisions in retrospect, because looking back on Carrot's journey from the moment we met her to now, yeah, it's definitely clear Oda was building up to something with her, obviously, but I never imagined it was making her the ruler of Zou. And I do, but when you look at I guess the one thing that was a dead giveaway was when you look at a lot of her scenes with Pedro, it actually does make sense. But I do, and one thing I think that does kind of lighten the blow on the fact that she's kind of a little too vastly inexperienced for this is how even Carrot's is how it feels like Carrot's reaction to the news, and just even everyone else kind of saying, we know you're not, it's sort of that self-aware thing of acknowledging the fact that, yeah, Carrot isn't probably the most experienced one to take up the role, but that's also kind of the point, because Zou, I think, in a lot of ways doesn't operate in a traditional sense in a traditional like monarchy in a traditional one ruler sense like the rest of the world. Like, yes, they have rulers, but those rulers are ones who also greatly depend on the residents of Zou themselves. Like, Zou's strength relies in its citizens, not just one ruler kind of thing. And I think that is kind of what Oda was trying to portray with this at the time. Of course, we also get a reunion with Sukiyaki revealing himself to Momo and Hiyori, which I had to look back on chapter 1056 to remind myself if this was in the manga, because for a brief moment I thought this was an anime-only scene, but upon rereading the chapter, I found, yeah, it was in the manga, and it's a scene like this is very nice, emotional. It's one of those very small but powerful moments that only elevated even more by having voice acting. It's a very bittersweet moment that, in the heat of emotion, you do start to understand why Sukiyaki didn't show himself, but in the moment and revealing himself, and to see his grandchildren so readily forgive him for not being there, does show that even after 20 years later, he still does have that opportunity to be the person he needs to be for his family, even if the only family he has left are Hiyori and Momo. And yeah, of course, I laughed. Of course, obviously, like probably everyone else watching this episode, I laughed at how everyone pretty much knew it was Sukiyaki this entire time, except Kinemon, with his 189 Galaxy Brain IQ, had no idea it was him. Like, it was like, it was Sukiyaki this entire time? I didn't know! Like, oh my god, oh, that Galaxy brand of yours, Kinemon, I absolutely love it. I really do. Like, really. One of these days, I wonder when he's gonna get caught. Like, seriously, one of these days, I wonder when he's actually gonna get caught for being absolutely stupid like that. But, yeah. Unfortunately, as much as I like this episode, there's one elephant in the room to talk about, which is that this episode more or less marks the end of Wano. And with that, the Straw Hats are kind of leaving those affected by Smile high and dry. And I remember at the time there was a bit of an outcry about this, but honestly, knowing where we're going next and the arc we're headed into, Egghead Island, I'm realizing more and more that this was intentional. That Oda was setting up that there's really only one man in existence outside of Caesar Clown who can help those people. And manga readers, you know who it is. Like, I still hold firm that the arc we're currently in the manga is setting up for, in some way in the future, for this person to be the one to just help with the Smile for it. It might even be when the story ends, but it is going to happen. Also, despite this episode having many great moments, there was one reunion with a certain character I was not looking forward to, and that is Caribou. And I know I've gone on rants about this guy in the past, but genuinely, like, for me, the thing about Caribou is I've got no clue why Oda keeps bringing this fucker back time and again. Because, I'm sorry, but even when he does serve, like, the smallest purpose to the story, he still, in my mind, he still serves no purpose other than to annoy the fuck out of me. And the biggest problem, more than anything, is every time Oda brings Caribou back, I'm always left questioning, what's Oda's endgame for this character? Like, why bring him back if all he's gonna be is an annoyance? With this one character, I don't, it's always just this one character, Caribou, that I just don't understand Oda's methodology at all. Although, I guess the one thing to take away from this moment is we see him say he needs to let someone know about Pluton's location, and at the time, I believe I thought he was talking about Buggy and Crossguild, but I get the feeling he might actually be working under, he might be talking about Blackbeard, that he's going to let Blackbeard know that Pluton's location or something, which, yeah, if he lets Blackbeard know, that's only going to make that's only going to make me hate the guy even more. I'm just saying. But, yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. I'm on Twitter, Analyst Crunchyroll. Be sure notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, everyone.